Steve Moran here with another episode of Foresight TV. My guest today is Chris Hollister. We're getting started a little bit late here. We had some technical challenges getting everybody on in the same place in the same time. Chris, I am so delighted about you being here. I wanted to actually set the stage before I run our intro. Chris and I have crossed paths a number of times, but a few weeks ago, I got a message from an executive director here in the Sacramento area where I live that said, I want you to come visit my community. For the first time in my entire life of working in senior living, I am working for a company that let me go do my thing to create amazing results. And because of that, I am at 100% occupancy with a waiting list. And I am just having the best time of my life, and we're changing the world. And so we've already written a story about it, but immediately I reached out to Chris and said, this is amazing. I got to have you on Foresight TV. So let me run this, and then we're going to jump into our conversation about what you are doing that is so crazy and incredible. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me. It's an honor, pleasure to be here.
Talk to me. Let's start I want to actually talk a little bit about Pegasus, what makes Pegasus tick, your background in the industry.
Well, thanks. We started in 1999. I've worked with, I've been in the sector since 1986. So I'm kind of a lifer in it. And this is my third entrepreneurial effort. Welltower reached out, which we've had a relationship with different entities since 1991. My partner, Stephen Vick, and they really called Stephen. I joined him. We're partners. He had some kind of a health scare, and I bought him out in 2021. Still friends, great guy, really one of the giants of the industry. So I've been CEO since then. We took over 36 buildings for them. We have a couple other that we manage. And, glad to be back in the fray, trying to take care of seniors. And our mission statement is to celebrate all lives. And we're trying to do that, celebrate, enhance all lives. So that's everyone's trying. That's what we're trying to do.
So I want to come back to sort of what I really want to talk about is sort of your philosophy of leadership. I was just welcome home. I don't know whether you saw it. They just came out with a quarterly report on sort of occupancy and move-in and leads and that kind of thing. And as an aggregate, they sort of show that senior living is stuck at 77% occupancy, and that's across all levels of care. So independent, IL, memory care. And there are obviously variabilities within that. And so to have a leader with that kind of occupancy is really incredible. And I'll just sort of add the other thing I hear a lot from executive directors is sort of I get dragged into meetings and stuff, and I can't do what I need to do to be able to be successful. And you're obviously doing it very different.
Well, thanks. It's I think one of the challenges has been, Steve, as you know, is finding the Roberts of the world, the executive director that reached out to you, and finding great people that have the skills and the empathy and the passion to go do this very difficult business. And I think it's a bit luck that we've done that. We are trying to hire better. We're running a private. I've had some press lately. I may have egg on my face if it doesn't work with a process we're doing that I'm calling Moneyball in the ED position with an academic to try to look at developing a custom tool to help us interview, because the reason this business is hard to scale is it's very dependent upon having a great on-site leadership team. But we are trying, and we get lucky sometimes. I think we were not 100% everywhere, but we really are At this point, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I mean, COVID's been the hardest thing of my career, and anyone who's been in it through that
Yeah.
period would know the mental health challenges from everyone from the CEO to the caregiver has been quite profound. And I really feel it's like a big fog lifting, and like, and it makes you realize people that went through World War II or whatever, they didn't know how it was going to end at the time, and we didn't know in the middle of COVID. But I really feel we've turned a corner, and we're going to see occupancy gains going forward here, and we're trying to get out in the communities more. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But that gives you an overview and a soundbite.
So I really love this idea of moneyballing the executive director position. Probably we ought to. I'm at an age where I understand exactly what that is. I can remember I guess I was probably still a teenager or a young adult when the book Moneyball came out. And let me sort of, why don't you talk a little bit about the Moneyball concept and where that came from?
Well, Michael Lewis is an author, of course. He's a book and a movie, and I've read a lot of his books. But it was about Billy Beane and the Oakland A's, and where the scouts and the professionals looking at baseball had a look. They had a look and these metrics they looked at for hiring a great baseball player, and he didn't have the money to compete with the Yankees and other larger cities. So he hired a data analyst to look at, a guy maybe pudgy and 5'6", and he can't run that fast, but he has great plate discipline. He can get on first base. It doesn't matter if you walk or you run in baseball. You just got to get on first base. Nobody steals bases anymore in the majors. So he did that, and they got to the World Series. And so I think all these tools are helpful. And, I'm sure I don't want to list names, but a lot of people use certain tools. This will be a custom designed tool for the industry. And if we can make this work, I'd like to figure out how to market it and help other operators. But this academic has made this his career, and he did it successfully in private business before going to get a PhD in it. He's highly competent. He's going to be able to help us. But we think we're going to have to look outside the industry and broaden our funnel and bring in experienced business people that have been successful with mission critical, other complex operations. We've had success with people out of the military, and I think we need to hire them as executive directors and then put them through a 6-month training program. I won't know the answer to this for a year or two, but we're optimistic about it. In the meantime, we've developed a mobile continuous quality improvement tool. It's in process. We have it on Excel. It's going to be a mobile app where our regionals and me as CEO, we can walk in a building and go through a checklist on our phone to really expect what we inspect. I think the whole industry is in reset mode of doing the basics and making sure we're being diligent about all the aspects of this very complicated business.
Yeah, I am so fascinated by the executive director problem challenge. I talked to a fairly significant CEO several years ago about executive directors and their particular company philosophy. It gives the executive director very little discretion. And I can't give you the exact terminology, but the conversation as we were talking about it, sort of the sound bite that came out of this particular leader was, we're paying an executive director $125,000 a year to run a building that's generating 10, 20, $30 million a year. And really, that's not very much money, which means that they're not really good enough to be able to take much personal responsibility. And so we've got to be very prescriptive about it. And it sort of rubbed me the wrong way. And it sounds like you see it differently than that.
I think it's hard to be prescriptive. We're in 12 states with different regs. I get the point, but Hammond Hunt, I bought his company in the 90s when I had Southern Assisted Living, the late 90s, and he had Hunt Assisted Living in Virginia and the Carolinas. And he used to say, if you've seen one assisted living community, you've seen one assisted living community. They're all a bit different. They're all like this complex human habitat. They have different needs. They have different preferences. Some have memory care. Most of ours do now. That's been of our big push. And I think you have to allow for a certain amount of discretion. And I see it as a mission. Here's the goal. How are you going to get there? You got to have some things that are in common. The same assessment tool generally works. The same policy and procedures, but you got to give some leeway in terms of what kind of life enrichment activities you do, how you exactly staff it in the dining room, what kind of food you serve in the dining room, and give them, I think, and people want to be entrepreneurs if you give them the tools, and you can have a positive culture where they trust you, and you're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk with them.
Yeah. One of the other questions I have for you, and I think you sort of have answered it, but I'd like to get maybe a little deeper into it, is uh, I kind of have this belief that people are all the same, and that you can take somebody who could be a really crummy executive director in one environment and you put them in another environment, Robert being an example of this, right, where they can really shine. And that mostly what makes for a great executive director is creating a company corporate culture that does that. I know there are a lot of people who feel like you either get a great executive director or you don't. And it seems like to me that there are a lot of sort of middle of the road executive directors out there that, given the right environment and the right coaching and training, could be really good. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Do you have thoughts?
No, I think that's true. I do think it's a team effort, right? I think you can take a really good executive director and put them in a bad situation if the whole culture and leadership of a business is broken. And, we took over, they're really businesses. I run 35 different businesses all over the
Yeah.
country. And they were, in some instances, quite frankly, kind of broken cultures, not only some deferred capital improvements, which is a notorious thing in the industry that capital providers have generally not kept up with. Welltower has been great in terms of giving these buildings the attention they need. And I will just tell you, they're beautiful now. The LED lighting alone is a game changer. When you go in and put in LED lighting to brighten it up and put in new paint and furniture and art, it's a transformational. But if you put a good ED in with a team that's broken and you don't have all that support, they can fail. And in some instances, we've had to make pretty big changes on site. But I really feel we've done most of that. We still have, probably 7 out of 35 that are still suffering, that need to get better. So we're not 100% everywhere, Steve, but we're working on it.
Well, and I'm not sure that you can ever get, for an enterprise your size, can you really get all of them cooking where you want it to be? I'm not sure you can. I'm better at hiring than I used to be, but I will tell you, I've hired some duds in the past. And I don't have any duds right now, by the way. So I want to sort of put that out there publicly with my team. I've got an amazing team that I'm just completely in love with. So talk to me a little bit about how you develop your executive directors and maybe other people in your organization.
We have training programs. Everyone has policy and procedures. I think we have, I think, the best regional team we've ever had, and try to really hold their hand the first 30, 60 days and make sure they understand our policy and procedures, how we do things, and give them the tools to be successful. Last year, we had our wings clipped for 2 years, and I couldn't go to the buildings. I mean, I kept trying to go, and Dr. Sandy Peterson, who's wonderful, in the middle of COVID, said, I can't have the CEO traipsing in, and next week they have COVID. It's such a joy. I've been to almost all communities this year. We have a converter van. We got a driver. We get on with the regional team and we drive all over California, for example, and visit every building, then try to go have a meal with the teams on site. And my perspective on humanity is the technology ends up hurting you, because the email it's like we've gone back to the telegraph. We went from the telegraph to the telephone to video. Now we're back to email, and it's such a sterile way to communicate. It's real easy to do what I've heard the term mind reading, where I'm reading between the lines of what I think you mean, and I don't like your tone. I don't know why you're writing this email. It's real easy to get mad at someone who is a stick figure behind an email. You got to go out and have authentic conversations. And I can tell you all the training, all the stuff we do, but I think more than anything, it's about getting off your ass and getting out into the communities and have our regionals that are doing that. And they're not drive-by social calls. They're, let's look at your CQI list. Are you doing stand-up? Who's manager on duty? Are you interviewing? How's the staffing going? Are you doing our connections program for memory care? And going through the list. Do we have work to do still? Absolutely. Do we fall short sometimes? Absolutely. But being present, you must be present to win, as I say. We have to be out in the communities.
Well, and I think that the other thing you didn't talk about, but you have to be doing is listening. All the data that I see and really the feedback I get from my own team is that one of the things that makes them like working for me is that when they've got a perspective or an idea or something they want to do, they want to be heard. And it doesn't always go the way they want. And of course, the truth of the matter is even though I'm the boss, let me tell you, I don't get the way I want a lot of the time either, right? We don't have the resources or the inclination. Maybe you don't experience that, but I just, can you talk a little bit about listening and how you do that and what that looks like?
Yeah, I think listening, I would put that under the headline of getting out and going into the communities. I've been going to brew pubs lately with the teams because I found when we go to a formal dinner, everyone's stiff. It's like you're at a wedding or something. But you go to a brew pub and have some bar food, and you sit across the table with a beer. That is helpful. We do surveys. We do the activated insights. We were a great place to work again. That's a big listening tool. We have action plans on those surveys. We had 10 buildings that were best of this year with US News. I wish we could get it up to 20 or 30, but we're working on it. And it's a process. Everybody who knows the business knows it's case management. We have frequent meetings. We do a meeting in the mountains in August, usually with the teams, and we have a lot of regional meetings where we do listen and we try to hear what the issues are, and give people the leeway, as you said, to succeed on the ground in Sacramento or Queensbury, New York, wherever they are.
When you sort of look at the industry for the next 5 years, where are you seeing the big opportunities?
I think we're at a moment of where there's going to be a whole lot of workouts. I mean, I know there are. There's a whole lot of markets that are overbuilt. I've been predicting it for 5 years, and it's taken longer to get here than I thought. And in some ways, it won't be as bad as I feared because everyone sees that it's about to get better in a couple of years. But some deals are so overbuilt and over financed and leveraged that they're going to have to go to new owners. But that's going to be 23, 24, most of the problem, I think. And I think when you turn 85, when you go to 2025, the baby boom's now 80. I said on a podcast last year that the industry is not going to boom till the Stones go off tour. And, the Stones are still touring. But I mean, when Jagger and the boys turn 80, a whole lot of other people are turning 80. And the memory care in particular is going to be in strong demand. I'm not a particular fan of a freestanding memory care, but people that do it and concentrate on that have been successful. I like the AL memory care model. I think there's going to be huge opportunities for more lifestyle situations with active adult. It's not I wish I was in it. I'm not. Am I too old to get in it? But that I think is going to be a lot of opportunity, kind of a barbell. I think there's going to be opportunity in active adult. And I think people that get through this tough period as construction and new starts really almost evaporate. It's so hard to finance right now. It's 350, 450 a unit to build new. If you're in a market and can hang through there, I think after 2025, it's going to keep going up for a few years and be a good period for us.
Do you think we'll see the interest rates come back down a bit?
I think so. We got to get.
Yeah.
My gosh, it's crisis du jour, right? But if we can get it through, I think that I've always been an optimist. I think it's going to work out and it will settle down. My own views, they probably overshot it a bit, but what do I know? I'm a dumb operator. I'm not an economist, but I think so.
What do you have thoughts on technology? What you like, what you wish were out there?
We're looking at robots for dining and vacuuming and all that. I think it's a helpful thing. It's not going to really. It's more for your staff and kind of a wow factor for customers. I think just simply mobile technology to communicate better with the residents, even do the care plans. We've seen our care revenue go up quite a bit just since we're not trying to overcharge people. We're just simply trying to get paid for what we do. That's been
Yeah.
huge. There's two different groups. Don't you may have met with them at SLIF in Austin, Steve, but that are doing interesting things with fall prediction and analytics. I think that's has a real promising future for us to help reduce falls and risk and take care of folks better. Um, I think things that communicate with people in assisted living have to recognize the fact that at least a third of our people in assisted living have some level of cognitive impairment, whether that's simply talking to an Alexa type device or ordering food. There is the term senior living, I think, gets bandied about a lot, and it obscures the vast differences between active adult and what is now assisted living. I'm old enough to remember the ICF SNF divide in nursing, and assisted living is now essentially the old ICF. I mean, we're taking care of people
Yeah.
we're a clinical business, and if you're going to come in and with technology and say all you got to do is have your resident do these things on a phone or a lot of them can't do that. They can't. It's hard for them to order a meal on an iPad even. I mean, you got to be very careful and understand who the end user is. That would be my advice to all the Silicon Valley tech people. But there's some exciting things happening. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a phone call with a guy who has got a sort of a technology-based product that he's would like to sell into senior livings outside the industry right now. And it's like, well, this is so simple. And it's like, well, what about the friction for the staff? Well, what does the staff have to do? And so we walked through it, and I just think that we've got to figure this out in a way to reduce friction. And it's one of my biggest concerns about technology is that it takes just a little bit of effort. But if you have 10 pieces of technology that each take a little bit of effort, pretty soon those become big burdens there on the organization. And you're right, on the fall detection, I think there's great stuff. The other area, how are you? Well, you already talked a little bit about data in this Moneyball approach. Any other areas where you're using data and it's helping with your operations?
Yeah, I think there's some things Welltower is bringing to us that are I don't know how much they want me to talk about it with our website that we think are going to be helpful. They have some very bright people doing things behind the scenes, and I'm excited to learn more about that. We're right on the cusp of it, and I think that I mean we could spend an hour and a half talking about AI, and I'm it's like. I'm a little lost with where that all may go, but I think there's going to be things with data behind the scenes that are going to be coming that are going to be very helpful. But, and Steve, when you look at survey results, and I've been trying to get the industry to do the same survey for 25 years since I was on the board of Alpha before it was Argentum. And U.S. News is great. It's one of the bigger platforms. It's great. People are coalescing around a few operators. But when you do those surveys, almost every time you look at it, and what matters to satisfaction and their willingness to refer is leadership, is the ED get back to me, and the head nurse, and staff interaction. People complain about the food, but when you do the cross correlations, they rarely are going, unless it's really bad, they're not going to move out over the food. They're going to move out because they called the ED and they don't call them back. Or the nurse didn't communicate the care needs. Or a staff member did not smile and was rough or whatever with their mother. And you're never going to replace, I don't think, a robot with a human helping your mother in and out of a shower and simply saying, how are you feeling today? How can I help you today? And if we could get rid of turnover and have empathetic, caring caregivers, it trumps all the technology in the world. And then I think you got to always come back to the human scale of this.
Oh man, you are talking my language. I look at senior living, and I it is one of the great beauties of senior living is it takes and provides an opportunity for people who are really at the very bottom of the economic scale to have a purposeful job and to grow to be whatever they want to be. Now, I want to start sort of caveat that a little bit by saying that talking to Lori Porter, who supports CNAs, that most of the CNAs she talks to, something like 85%, actually love being CNAs, and they're not well, they want to increase their skills and those kinds of things. They're actually not interested in being a nurse or moving up. And so we have this ability to honor it. And so maybe you talk a little bit more about what you're doing to sort of make working at that front line a great experience, because I think that's such an important part of that turnover equation.
Well, we're doing a lot of things with recognition at different points, but people say, pays one aspect, it doesn't matter. To a certain level, it does matter. If you can go work at McDonald's or In-N-Out Burger for $18 an hour, and you're getting paid 15 to do a lot harder work, even if you're mission driven, you have to eat.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm going to sound maybe like a bleeding heart here, but I don't care. I mean, I think it's good that our caregivers are making more money. And I think most families were okay with our rate increases because they saw how hard we were working, and they know that that's going, as we told them, to pay higher wages. And you start getting closer to $20 an hour for an aide for CNA, and it gets closer to a living wage. We've tried very, very hard to make the benefits affordable. We absorb the cost for single mothers or single parents or people with children, but it's still not as high as it should be. That they have that health coverage, but training, and if you look at hospitality and other service sectors, we are not rated highly on advancement. And one of the things I love about our Connections program for dementia, for memory care, is that gives another avenue for people to say, you know what, you want to go learn about this and maybe become a memory care director eventually. Shift leaders, I think we need to offer that to keep people longer and show them that you're not stuck at one level your whole career. There's ways to advance.
Terrific. What else should I be asking you? I feel like there's something I should ask you about that I haven't, and I don't know what I'm missing here.
Oh, well, you're going to put me on the spot. It's always been a challenge to get paid for what you do. And, I think the fundamental challenge in people that are new to the sector have not always understood this is people with the acuity growing, when they're coming in now at age 87 instead of 77, they are not only frailer when they come in, but because they're further down on the frailty and often with early signs of dementia, their care needs are changing more rapidly. And that makes those conversations with families more difficult. It makes it harder to capture the true care levels that we're providing to get paid for what we do. So being on top of that has been a major push, and that's where technology can help, because if you can show what you're doing and capturing it by showing that data to the families, it makes the conversation a lot easier. I think scheduling still, we've gotten agency mostly out of the building, Steve. Knock on wood, it's still not completely out in a few places, but we've done a much better job just the last few months. But our nurses, I talked to a regional the other day in our company, and she started as a CNA. She's a self-made person, fantastic person. Went to be a health and wellness director, eventually then an ED, now a regional. Said the health and wellness director is the hardest job I've ever had. And they need help with the scheduling and the management. They're trained as clinicians, and then they become managers in senior living.
Yeah.
And we're experimenting with sort of an assistant ED/chief HR. That we haven't done it except in some of our larger buildings, but I think we're going to see more of that, where there's really more of a HR type person helping with the scheduling and the training, so the nurses can look at care plans and stay on part of the clinical, and other people, the ED and that other person, talk to the families more and manage the money side of the care more than they do.
Cool. So I want to do a couple quick lightning round questions with you before we're done here. My first question for you is this: what's the worst piece of advice that anybody's ever given you? Just a sentence or two.
The worst piece of advice anyone's ever given to me. Does it have to be in senior living?
Doesn't have to be. Could be anything.
Go into the wine business. I have a small vineyard in New Zealand, and I don't know how you make money in the wine business. It's like a vanity
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, that's kind of my sense too. I've known some people who have gone into that business. I actually have a high school friend who's got a part ownership in a winery, and I think that all she and her husband get out of it is maybe a case or two of wine a year or
Right, right.
so. That makes perfect sense to me. And then let me see. I got one more. What's the best part of your job?
Best part of my job is visiting the communities and talking with residents and employees and hearing life stories in particular. I don't know how much time you have. I was in Leawood, Kansas, and told a guy I'd lived in New Zealand. He was in a wheelchair. He's like quite elderly. And he said, I was near the islands there. And I said, when was that? He said, 1944, Guadalcanal. And I mean, just the life stories of these people. I wish we could have a documentary effort on this, Steve. I'd love to see us do more of that. We're losing these life stories that are 20th century lives that are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. In one of the presentations at the Senior Living Executive Conference this week, one of the keynotes, I made a note on it was the guy on the last day who, I don't know whether you were there for the bucket list, guy who did these four guys who did the bucket list out of Canada. But I've got a note in my notebook that says Senior Living, the movie. And I keep thinking that there's a movie to be had that could be really, really powerful in that direction. Jane, before we close off, it looks like we actually have a question that came in, and I'd love to maybe pop that up. How much of your marketing effort is focused on adult children, decision makers versus residents themselves?
I think a vast majority of it is, a whole lot of it is with that is the principal buyer, and particularly for assisted living, for independent living, and we have 600, 700 IL units, independent living. It's more the resident. For assisted living, and certainly for memory care, it is really the adult child.
Yeah, yeah. And so, Chris, thank you very much. We are about out of time. I do actually have one quick question for you. I'm thinking there are probably going to be more than one person who's watching this who says, I want to go work for that guy. Are you guys hiring?
Oh, we're always hiring, man. Come join the party. Come to the dark side. We have cookies. That's
Good. So if you find Chris on LinkedIn or through their website, thank you very much. And if you can hold on for just a second afterwards, I'm going to close out with this.